Chapter 2! Woo!
Hello, my name is Roberto. I'll be talking about Kyushu 1 and talks about population concentrations and where they mostly reside. In the start of the Kyushu, we can see that it talks about populations in the world and how they aren't distributed correctly. We can help measure these populations with two things, concentration and density. Density can help measure the relationship between numbers of people and its resources, and concentration can be depicted on a map, which the size depends on the size of the population rather than the land area. There are 4 clusters in the world: East Asia, South Asia, Europe, and Southwest Asia. East Asia contains 1/4 of the population of the world, at where 1/2 of its population live in rural areas and work as farmers. South Asia contains 1/4 of its population of the world, and Europe contains 3/4 of the population, which live in cities, and 10% are farmers. Last and finally, Southeast Asia, which contains 600 million people and the largest population concentration. Moving away from giant populations, sparsely populated regions, what they are, if they are either too cold, too wet, too dry, or too mountainous. And overall, 20% of the dry lands cover Earth's surface, which makes it impossible to farm. Wetlands, which are located in the equator, giving the surface more nutrients and making it easier and better to farm. Cold lands, which are mainly located near the North and South Pole and make the land permanently frozen, making it impossible to farm. Mountainous lands, which create steep land and sometimes snow at times, but people still love to populate them. Arithmetic density, which is the total number of objects in a given land. People use this to compare the number of people trying to live in the land. Physiological density is to look at a number of people per area of a certain region and provide more meaningful population. Agricultural density is the amount of land suitable for a farm, and fun fact is that 2 countries can have the similar physiological density but produce different amounts of food.
Kyushu 2, Chapter 2. The main idea of this is population increases rapidly where more people are born than die. It declines where deaths outnumber births. The components of population growth. Geographers measure population by using 3 measures. Crude birth rate is the total number of live births in a year for every 1,000 people alive in the society. Crude death rate is the total number of deaths in a year for every 1,000 people alive in the society. Natural increase rate, percentage by which population grows in a year. Natural increase. The world population has been growing by 1.2%. That's not a lot. The world NRI is lower than its all-time peak of 2.2% in 1996. About 82 million people are added to the world population annually. 1/10 of 1% can produce very large swings in population growth. Doubling time. Number of years needed to double a population. World population could double in 54 years. The population could reach 24 billion in 2100. More than 95% of natural increase is clustered in developing countries. Most of the world's additional people live in countries that are least able to maintain them. That's sad. Fertility. The highest CBRs in sub-Saharan Africa, while the lowest are in Europe. Africa has a CBR over 40, while Europe is below 10. Total fertility rate is used to measure the number of births in the society. Total fertility rate. The average number of children a woman will have throughout her childbearing years. Mortality. Developed countries have lower natural increase, crude birth, and total fertility. Developing countries are the opposite. The highest CDR, crude death rate, in the world is 17%. Population pyramid. Shows percent of total population in 5 years, with groups, males shown left and females shown right on the graph. Dependency ratio. Dependency ratio, number of people who are too young or too old to work. Sub-Saharan Africa has high dependency ratio. Sex ratio is the number of males per 100 females. On average, women live 7 years longer than men. Hear that, Messias? You're lucky. Developed countries will have more females than males.
So continuing on with key issue 2, we have key issue 3. I'm Gabriel Mendoza. We're going to be talking about the demographic transition. So it is basically just the concept of process of change in society's population from high crude birth, death rates, and low natural increase to all low rates with higher population. It consists of 4 stages. Stage 1, which is the low growth, it's high birth, death rates with no long-term natural increase. So this was just where people mostly depended on hunting and gathering small things. It was only the beginning. And then we hit stage 2, which is high growth. High birth rates and natural increase, but low death rates. So this is the spark of the Industrial Revolution. There was major improvement in manufacturing goods, medical revolution, so people would live basically longer lives. So on to stage 3, which is the decreasing growth. Then death rates decline, while natural increase began to moderate. The crude birth rate drops more sharply and quicker than the crude death rate. It's most likely to happen if you live in a city. So stage 4, which is low growth, which is low birth, death rates produce no natural increase with possibly 0 decrease. And that's when we hit the idea of zero population growth, which is crude birth rate, crude death rate, and natural increase rate decline to the point where it reaches 0 completely. Declining birth rates is all over the world, so it's not just one specific area. There's 2 strategies that has been made towards this entire improvement to help. So there's lowering birth rates through education and healthcare. So improving local economic conditions. Women prefer to be in employment with better education and careers before they decide to have their baby. Lowering birth rates through contraception, which is emphasizing importance of diffusing contraceptions. Many use birth control programs, and a lot of them just religion-wise, they just prefer not to have a baby. Malthus on overpopulation. So he talked about contemporary neo-Malthusians, which is Malthus' time said only a few wealthy countries enter stage 2, and he failed to show poor countries would have rapid growth. So world population growth is outstripping because of the wide variety of resources, food, water, and energy. Of course, like any person, and they have their own personal opinions, they would have critics. So the theory has been severely criticized all over because of resource depletion, which is considered the theory unrealistic because it's built on belief of world's resources. Population growth, critics also believe that large populations stimulate economic growth, more production, which leads to more production of food. More brains means more ideas to help improve just life in general. But they also made a point. So the theory is becoming incorrect with high human population growth. He's talking about Japan's declining population. The country faces population decline in future. It will have a high population of old, not young. Now, that is to say the personal opinions of people deciding to have their jobs, their careers, and you know what, they don't have to have that stress of having to have their baby. The US population is going to grow due to immigration. And, Japan doesn't really welcome outsiders, and there's severe shortage of workers there. Population futures. So the demographic transition possible stage 5 decline. 2 big breaks in demographic transition. The first break is sudden drop in death rates that comes with technology innovation. The second break is sudden drop in birth rates from changing of social customs. Right? Mortality among elderly. So they're now exposed to services that now entitles them to be able to live longer. To China and India, which they both heavily influence future prospects for global overpopulation. They both currently have 1/3 of the world's population. So India's population policies first half of the 20th century, the population increased and decreased of diseases. First country to embark national family program. Birth control substituted for low price and abortions legalized with surgical procedures. So the new government removed family planning due to being forcibly sterilized. And they promoted genetic education and national radio. China's population policies is a substantial process in reducing its rate growth. China has lower crude birth rates than the US. You need to have a permit to have a child, overall. And to have a second child, there is a must-pay fee. It prohibits marriage until 22 and women 20.
Okay, so my project was to do key issue 4. So stage 1 was the bubonic plague, and what happened in stage 1 was that people were dying because of plagues and diseases that are big but could be saved through medical advances that are way in the future. Like, on to stage 2 is receding pandemics, but rapidly declining CDR. So what happened in pandemics is there was a cholera, which is like a form of disease that happened mainly to poor people. The main place it's at is sub-Saharan Africa. It all started on the construction of water and sewer systems, which were all contaminated water. Stage 3 is degenerative diseases, moderately declining CDR. So this stage is when better medical. So in this stage, people decrease in deaths. So there's not that many diseases as before, but there's still chronic disease disorders, which is basically aging, and that means people are actually living longer than how they used to. Stage 4, which is delayed generative disease, low but increasing CDR, diseases and cancers, and life expectancy of older people is extended through medical advances, improving health and behavior changes such as better diet, reduced use of tobacco and alcohol, and exercise. So then the last stage is stage 5. Reason for possible stage 5 is evolution. Poverty, increased connections are evolving and becoming resistant to antibiotics and DDT. And stage 5, poverty, is basically when people are so poor they're not able to buy things that could help them with like their diseases, which causes a large death rate. The last part of the stage is increased connections, which contains AIDS, which is a main thing because a lot of people in the world have AIDS, especially in Africa.
My name is Ruin. I'll be covering the rest of Key Issue 4, Healthcare and Medical Service. The importance of health. Two important indicators of health in a country are infant mortal rates and life expectancy. Infant mortal rates, or IMR, is the annual number of deaths of infants under 1 year. It is usually expression as a number of deaths among infants per 1,000 births rather than a percent of age. Life expectancy is an age measures the average number of a year a new infant can expect to live at a current mentality year or so. 17% of children in developing countries are not immune against other types of diseases compared to 7% in developing countries.